At a small birthday dinner last year, 12 people sat around a table. One of the guests, a guy with over 8,000 followers, posted about it beforehand, with story countdowns and the whole works. Another guest kept his phone completely out of sight the entire night. By the time the night ended, the connected guest had spent most of it checking who viewed his story and angling shots of the food. He gave an altered version of the dinner to 8,000 strangers, but the 12 actual people at the table got barely a fraction of him. The host later noted quietly, "I don't think he was really there." Contrast that with the guest who never took his phone out. He talked to everyone and recalled tiny details from conversations months earlier. He left without documenting a single moment, yet received a text the next morning from the host expressing how much his real presence meant. Why do we accept the guest performing for an audience of strangers as our default setting, while reflexively treating the person who quietly opts out of documenting their life as someone who needs to be figured out? We live in a culture that operates as a performance economy. In a world built entirely around visibility, choosing not to participate feels like a glitch in the system. When someone refuses to post their life, they are inevitably met with suspicion. People immediately want to know what they are hiding. It is tempting to look at highly private people and assume they are naturally enlightened beings floating above the noise. The reality is usually much messier. For many, disappearing from the feed was a survival tactic triggered by something painful. A relationship ended, or a depressive episode made the gap between their daily reality and everyone else's highlight reel unbearable. Or they shared something deeply vulnerable that the algorithm completely ignored. Leaving the feed was an act of self-preservation, a necessary withdrawal for those who had already been burned by the machine and decided not to go back. Regardless of why they left, almost everyone who unplugs describes a very specific physical sensation a few weeks later. A persistent humming background noise suddenly stops, and they realize they haven't heard actual silence in years. A study published in the Journal of Consumer Research actually maps out why that quiet happens. When you experience something directly, your brain is fully engaged in living the moment. It actively encodes sights and sounds to build a strong emotional memory of what's happening. But the mental act of preparing to document that exact same experience creates a second competing track. You are pulling your own attention out of the room to simultaneously package the moment for an external audience. Because these processes compete for the same energy, the study found that merely anticipating sharing an experience measurably reduces how much you actually enjoy it. The memory you form ends up shallower. Private people unconsciously felt this heavy cognitive tax on their memories and simply stopped paying it. They chose to keep the entire experience for themselves. Psychologists use the term private self-consciousness to describe the way these individuals orient themselves to the world. Private self-consciousness is the psychological tendency to focus inward. It is the habit of examining your own thoughts and feelings, rather than constantly monitoring how you are being perceived by others. This does not mean they are detached or disconnected from their surroundings. They are actually highly attuned to their environment, but the processing happens entirely on the inside. Modern culture demands we constantly ask, how does my life look to everyone else? These individuals are quietly asking, what do I genuinely think and feel about this? In a culture built around external confirmation, an internally stable sense of self that doesn't require audience validation is a massive psychological advantage, even if it is often misconstrued as a defect. Opting out entirely creates immediate social friction. When you stop posting, you become harder to track, and friendships that relied on low-effort likes and replies often quietly dissolve through neglect. But the Harvard study of adult development offers a compelling response to the loss of those casual connections. Researchers tracked participants over 80 years, examining every aspect of their lives to determine exactly what creates a fulfilling life. The data is incredibly clear. Longevity and lifelong happiness are overwhelmingly predicted by the depth of your close relationships, not the sheer quantity of shallow ties you maintain. The friction of not posting serves a highly practical purpose. It acts as a natural filter, burning away the superficial network to reveal the very few people willing to pick up the phone and make actual plans. Younger generations are now having to actively and painstakingly train themselves to let an experience happen without turning it into content. The people who held on to that instinct walk around with a rare quality of daily presence. No part of their brain is busy drafting a clever caption or anticipating a hypothetical audience's reaction. This state of being is authorship, the profound feeling that your life belongs entirely to you. Refusing to outsource your identity to a feed places you ahead of a cultural shift that is only now starting to gain momentum. Choosing privacy in a hyper-visible world is a forward-looking stance on a conversation the rest of society is only just beginning to have.